This is a quick look at the sacks. Denver Broncos lead the NFL in sacks. 46 times they've sacked the quarterback. 46. The Steelers and Seahawks are second at 32. That's a 14 sack difference. Welcome to Justice Stats NFL Top 10's for Friday. My name's Ernie Jennings, and I'm hosting this podcast. We're going to look at the Thursday night game, spend a little time with that. Then we're going to take a look at what I consider the top 10 matchups for this upcoming week. I'm trying to do two things at once here. So we'll look at the top 10 matchups, I think. There's a lot of matchups that are critical for some teams. And so we'll take a look at those. I mean, we are over halfway through the season now. And so things become more important. Each win or loss becomes a little bit more important, especially for the teams. And that's my focus will be, especially for the teams that, are trying to hang in there to make the playoffs, that kind of thing. There are some teams that, and I'll mention it when we get to it, that I may not consider that in this category of top 10 matchups for the weekend, even though it's a big game for their teams. And we'll also look at a few stats as well. Some interesting stats that for teams, different teams. And if we have any time left, a couple other things. But we're going to kick it off with a Thursday night football game. It was a pretty good game for the most part. At halftime, at least it was still competitive. The Patriots were winning 14-7. The Jets initially in the first quarter came down and scored a touchdown, but there was a turnover by Fields on trying to take the handoff or take the the snap, and drop the ball. And instead of falling on it, he kept trying to pick it up, and he ended up not picking it up. And the New England Patriots grabbed the fumble. So that really cost him, because then the Patriots went down and scored. I believe it was probably a field goal, but still that put them up. And so maybe it was a touchdown, actually. So the Jets were playing from behind, and it's just not their game. I mean, when you look at some of the numbers Justin Fields has the last couple of weeks, less than 60 yards or so of passing, this was a good game for him. He only passed for 116 yards and one touchdown. That's pitiful, really. But for him, I guess that's improvement. So the Patriots ended up winning this game 27-14. They are 9-2 now. And that makes, for Buffalo, their game very critical for them to win. They have to keep pace. In this game, Drake May, 25-34 for 281 yards, one touchdown, only sacked once, which is good for him because he's in the top 10 as far as quarterbacks being sacked. Now, for the Patriots, we got a couple of top 10s here. One for the Patriots is the coach, Vrabel. He now has, he's tied for 10th all time in coaching wins with 9. And I didn't put the charts up because he's only got 9 wins. It's a long ways from being significant. Now for the Jets, Quincy Williams has been playing fairly well. He got benched briefly, but then he came back last week, had a couple of tackles for loss, led the team. There were several people with 8 tackles in this game, but he had 6 solo tackles, and he did have a tackle for loss in this game. That tackle for loss moved him out of a tie with John Abraham and David Harris. Both of those players also had 55 sacks in their career for the Jets. So now Quincy Williams is all alone in 6th place with 56 sacks. Next up for him is his brother, Quinnen Williams, who has 59. So he's 3 behind his own brother. Isn't that funny? Now, Quinnen Williams was traded away, so he's no longer on the team. And so at some point, Quincy Williams will pass him. But he's moving up the list. And actually, for a player that only came in the league in 2021, he's already got 56 tackles for loss. The record is held by Sean Ellis from 2000 to 2010 with 80. So if he could stay with the team, and that's a big if, he definitely has a chance to, in what, 2 years maybe, catch Sean Ellis and become the number one leader in New York Jets history for tackles for loss. So we'll see how that goes for him. All right, that's a little bit on that game. It was a fun game to watch. I mean, man, I really do like Drake May. He's just very intelligent quarterback and just impressive. The way he stays calm no matter what's going on and finds the open receiver. And none of his receivers to me are great. I mean, Stephon Diggs was great, and he had the best game here, 9 catches for 105 yards. Matt Collins, the tight end, or not tight end. Matt Collins had 4 catches for 64, and Hunter Henry, the tight end, had 4 catches for 45. The other big player in this game was Travion Henderson. Not as many yards as last week, only 62 rushing yards on 19 carries. But he did have 2 rushing touchdowns, and he caught 5 passes for 31 yards and another touchdown. So 3 touchdowns for him in this game. Big game for him, really. And we'll see if he stays in this kind of a dominant role. I mean, he had 19 carries in this game. Dearness Johnson had 3 as the other running back. I mean, Drake May had 4, but, he wasn't a running back. So really, it was all the Henderson show in this game. For the Jets, obviously, they're hoping more from Breece Hall in this game. 14 carries, 58 yards, not much. And what's crazy in this game is Justin Fields is just terrible as a quarterback. He's good at running back. He had 11 carries, 67 yards, and a touchdown. Okay, that's good. But I don't see Breece Hall had 2 catches for 6 yards. Why is somebody out of the tight end, the running backs, not catching a few more passes out of the backfield? Isaiah Williams had 1 catch for 2 yards. And maybe they don't have it set up that way. My other option for them was to go into some kind of college formation and just run the ball, whether it's Breece Hall, Isaiah Williams, or I say Isaiah Davis, I should say. Isaiah Williams as well, but Isaiah Davis or Justin Fields himself, and just run the ball. Justin Fields can't throw. I mean, he's not on target, and some of his passes are like rifle shots no matter how close the receiver is. He's just not that good. He was 15 for 26, 116 yards. So I don't know what they're going to do. Obviously, they need a new quarterback. This experiment with Fields for whatever team he's been on has just been a failure. 1, he just doesn't have the touch. 2, I don't think he really has a quarterback smarts. And, maybe you can say he just doesn't have the talent with him, but he does, but I don't know. It hasn't mattered where he's played. He comes up the same way. He's great for fantasy points wise because of his rushing ability, but as a quarterback for a team, nuh-uh. All right, enough of that game. Let's move on to my top 10 matchups for week 10. Top 10 matchups for week 10. Let me get that up here. I want to get this schedule or the standings up here. All right, my first one. Now these, I didn't try to put these in a real order because it's pretty hard to do that. But, they're all important. So I have them 1 through 10. But number 1, Buccaneers versus the Bills. They're both 6-3. Now, the Buccaneers already lost last week to the Patriots from the AFC East. Now they got to play the Buffalo Bills. So 2 teams right back to back that are good. It's not as big a game for the Buccaneers as it is for the Bills. I mean, the Buccaneers really do need to win this game to stay ahead of the Carolina Panthers. But it's not as dire a situation, I think, as it is for the Buffalo Bills. If the Buffalo Bills lose this game and go to 6-4, they are now 3 full games behind the New England Patriots, and they've already lost to the Patriots once. That, to me, this is a game the Buffalo Bills need to win. It is in Buffalo, so they should win this game, but it's not a guarantee. They lost to Miami, so we'll see what happens there. But this is a big game for the Buffalo Bills. The next game, the Kansas City Chiefs versus the Denver Broncos. This is another game much more important for the Kansas City Chiefs than the Denver Broncos. I mean, the Broncos pretty much are on their way to making the playoffs. It's just where will they end up? And, as the division champion or a playoff, or a wild card team or whatever. But at 8-2 right now, this game doesn't hurt them as much as it will with the Kansas City Chiefs if they lose, because the Kansas City Chiefs are 5-4, and they're not even in the playoffs right now. They lose this game, which means then the Denver Broncos go to 9-2. Kansas City Chiefs are 5-5. That's a 4-game lead for the Broncos over the Chiefs with only 7 games to play. So I think it's almost the end. I guess the Kansas City Chiefs would only have the option of trying to be a wild card team, but another loss, since they're not in the playoffs now, would really hurt their chances, especially as we look at the next game, which is the Los Angeles Chargers versus the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, this game is important for both of them. One, in the fact that for the Chargers, if the Broncos win, the Chargers need to win to keep pace. They're a game behind right now, and, they don't want to fall 2 games back. It's also important for the Chargers in the sense if they can win, even if the Broncos win as well, they'll stay up with them. But let's say the Broncos lose, the Chiefs win. It just pushes the Chiefs a little bit closer to the Chargers, and they do play again. So the Chargers want to maintain this gap they have right now over the Chiefs, a 1.5 lead over the Chiefs, and they want to hang on to that. You just can't give the Chiefs an inch, and so the Chargers really need to win this game. Now, for the Jaguars, it's even more dire. They are in the playoffs, quote unquote, despite the fact that they've lost 2 out of 3, 3 out of 4. They've really fallen off just haven't played well. Penalties, bad game decision. That game against Houston Texans was a disaster. There's anything good to say about that game. But right now, the Jaguars are 2.5 games behind the Colts right now. They need to win this game to stay up with the Colts, at least within reach, because they still have to play the Colts twice. So they have a chance. But also, if they just want to stay in the playoff hunt, they have to win this game. They lose this game, they probably are dropping out of any playoff position at this point in time. So it's a big game for the Jaguars as well. Next game, Chicago Bears versus the Minnesota Vikings. This is a big game for both teams. Right now, which I find quite amazing, the Chicago Bears are tied for first place with the Detroit Lions at 6-3, but Minnesota Vikings are only 2 games back at 4-5. So Minnesota Vikings really need to win this game to pull within 1 game of the Bears. This is such a close division. I mean, Lions and Bears 6-3, Packers are at 5-3-1, and then Minnesota 4-5. I think Minnesota loses this game, they're pretty much done. You just can't make the playoffs probably even. I wouldn't expect every team from this division to make the playoffs as a wild card or a division winner. It's just not going to happen. So for Minnesota, they really do need to win the game, and the Detroit Lions do too. I mean, 6-3, they lose, the Bears and Packers win, they move from first to third. So they do need to win this game as well. And speaking of the Packers, they're the next one. They are 5-3-1. They're playing the New York Giants, a game they should win, even though it's in New York and with a new coach for the Giants. So we'll see what happens with that, if it makes any kind of change, positive change for the Giants. But for the Packers, last week they were number 1. This week, going into this week now, they're ranked 3rd in their division. So at 5-3-1, if they want to keep pace, they need to win. If they don't and they lose, again, it just pushes them another game back of the Bears and the Lions. So Packers have lost 2 in a row. They really do need to win this game to get back on track. So we'll see what happens with that. Next game up, another game where with Pittsburgh Steelers hosting the Cincinnati Bengals. This is an interesting game because the Pittsburgh Steelers need to win. Baltimore Ravens have won 3 in a row. They are on their move up from the bottom of this division to the top. They're on their way back to where they were last year. They're 4-5, the Ravens are. Pittsburgh Steelers are 5-4. So the Steelers really need to win this game to stay ahead of the Ravens. Otherwise, the Ravens are playing a team they should beat as well, the Cleveland Browns, in their own division, another division game for them. And they go to 5-5. The Pittsburgh Steelers lose and go to 5-5. What a division this is. And speaking of that, the Steelers are playing the Bengals, and the Bengals, believe it or not, at 3-6 are only 2 games back of first place. So they win this game against the Steelers. They go to 4-6. The Steelers are 5-5. They're only a game back with 7 games to go. So anything can happen. What a close division this is. If that happens, we got a very tight division. So this is a big game for the Steelers and the Bengals. Now, another one where this could be the end of the line for the Atlanta Falcons, but it's the Carolina Panthers versus the Atlanta Falcons. This is in the AFC South. It's a divisional matchup. The Falcons, man, they were right in this. They were 3-2. They are now 3-6. They've lost 4 in a row. Everybody lost in this division, like I mentioned in a previous podcast, except for the New Orleans Saints, who are 2-8. Now, what saved the Atlanta Falcons a little bit is Tampa Bay has had a little bit of a snafu. They lost last week. They are now 6-3. Carolina Panthers lost to the Saints. They're 5-5. And the Atlanta Falcons are 3-6. So this is the last hurrah. Atlanta Falcons win this game. They go to 4-6. Tampa Bay could lose and go to 6-4. I mean, they're playing the Bills in Buffalo, so they definitely could lose their game. They go to 6-4. Now the Atlanta Falcons are at 4-6. They're only 2 games back with 7 to go. Carolina Panthers. So they definitely need to beat the Carolina Panthers, because if they do, then they're only a half game behind the Panthers as well. So it's a huge game for Atlanta. They lose, I think they're out. They're done. We'll see what they do with their team. They'll go to 3-7. They're pretty much toast after that. They're such a team that looks horrible sometimes. Their offense looks horrible, but then sometimes they look pretty good. I don't know if they need to focus more with Bijan Robinson as the focal point of their team. I mean, man, you've got him. You've got Drake London. Penix needs to pick up his game and play better. Their defense isn't bad at all. It's a decent defense. So why Atlanta Falcons are 3-6 is beyond me, honestly. Why Carolina Panthers are 5-5 is kind of beyond me too, because I did not expect them to be at 500 at this point in the season. So that was the big game, Carolina Panthers versus the Atlanta Falcons. Number 8 game, Houston Texans versus the I'm all over the place here. Tennessee Titans. I need to take a drink here. Either that, I'm going too fast. This game is big for Houston as they try to make this comeback. I mean, last week when they beat the Jaguars, I think their season was toast if they lost. If they would have lost, because they were 3-5 going into the game, they would have been 3-6. And instead, they are 4-5, just a game behind the Jaguars now. But still, 3.5 games behind the Indianapolis Colts. So they're more looking at playoff possibilities. And because the Jaguars are in the playoffs right now at 5-4, Houston wins their game, the Jaguars lose to the Chargers. All of a sudden, the Houston Texans are a team to have to think about. So they need to win this game. Tennessee Titans obviously are out of it. They're fighting for a draft pick right now. This is a game Houston should win and go to 5-5. So it's really important in the Jaguars, as I mentioned earlier, for them to win. But it's against the Chargers. That's going to be a very tough game for the Jaguars to win. We could see a big upheaval in this division. I mean, the Indianapolis Colts 8-2. They are way out in the lead in this division. I think maybe one of the two teams, the Jaguars or the Texans, make it as a wild card team, but it's possible that neither do. So we'll have to see what happens there. But it is incumbent for both of them to continue to win, and Texans definitely have a chance this week. Number 9 game, we already kind of talked about them a little bit, and that's the Ravens. Baltimore Ravens are playing the Browns. So we've already talked about it a little bit, but they're 4-5. They're only a game behind the Pittsburgh Steelers, so they're putting such pressure on these teams with a 3-game winning streak. They've passed the Cincinnati Bengals, and now they're looking at the Pittsburgh Steelers in their attempt to move into first place. Last game we'll look at, and that's the 49ers versus the Cardinals. The 49ers at one point were in first place. They've been losing more than they've been winning lately, and they have dropped all the way down to 6-4. While the Seahawks and the Rams are both 7-2 and have been on 4-game winning streaks. I did mention I didn't put the Seahawks-Rams game in this list of matchups for Week 10. It's a huge matchup in the sense of who's going to be in first place in the NFC West, but both of these teams are going to the playoffs, in my opinion, regardless of who loses this game. So it is a big game as far as where they're going to position themselves in the playoffs, but as far as making it into the playoffs, they're both going to be in ultimately. I can't say the same for the 49ers at 6-4. They're in the playoffs, but they lose this game. They are really cutting their chances down because you've got other teams at 6-3, like the Bears. Packers are 5-3. These are teams with better records. Carolina Panthers, if they win and the 49ers lose, they both have the same records. So the 49ers are looking at wild card here, and their chances really die if they can't win this game. As far as the Arizona Cardinals, unless they miraculously come back and win a bunch of games, and which is possible because they've been losing games in the worst way possible. But I don't see that happening. I think they're on their way, out of the playoff contention altogether. All right. That's my look at the top 10 matchups for Week 10. We'll see how they go. See where the standings end up after this week. All right, let's take a quick look at a couple of top 10. Now, one of these is the first one we're going to look at is scoring. Last week, this top 10 teams in scoring. The Indianapolis Colts have been number one pretty much all season. And they stayed at 32.1 points a game. They only dropped 1/10 of a point. So they were right there. But last week, every other team that was had scored at least 30 points a game dropped out of that category. The only one up there was Indianapolis Colts. But then last week, the Detroit Lions, I think, scored 42 and Seattle scored 44, somewhere like that. So they both jumped back up into 30-plus point range. So the Detroit Lions are now second at 31.4, and the Seattle Seahawks are at 30.6. What's also interesting about this is the Indianapolis Colts are gradually creeping back to the pack in scoring and point differential. At some point, I see the Seahawks and the Lions probably catching and passing the Colts in these two categories. The only other team on this list, well, the newest team on this list that wasn't in the top 10 last week, the Baltimore Ravens come in at 10th at 25.4. Just another sign that this team has started to figure things out, are on their way back into making the playoffs and being a team of significance. All right. Let's look at point differential, the scoring margin, like I was saying. Indianapolis Colts continue to lead, but their lead has dwindled. A couple weeks ago, they were averaging a point differential over 14 points a game. Last week, it dropped to 12. This week, it's 11.5. The Seahawks now are 11.4. They're only 1/10 of a point behind. So like I was saying, there's a chance to see the Seahawks move into first. The Rams, this is why the Seahawks and Rams are so fun to watch. And their game will be a big game and hopefully a very entertaining game. But the Rams are second or third at 10.9 plus points. in their scoring margin. So the Seahawks and Rams are right there together. Now, the Detroit Lions are another one back up there. They've moved way up. They were at 7.6 point scoring margin. They jumped up to 9.2. So they're fourth. They're the top four teams, and they are four good teams. Kansas City Chiefs, the team at 5-4, they still have a decent scoring margin of 8.4 over the other teams. Pretty interesting to see that. All right, look at a couple more here. Turnover differential. This is where the Chicago Bears, this is how they are at 6-3. Because honestly, Caleb Williams has been playing pretty good, but not great. But in the turnover differential, they're at plus 14. They are dominating in this category. I mean, the Jaguars and Tampa Bay Buccaneers are tied for second with 8. Bears have 14. 20 takeaways to 6 giveaways. So the Chicago Bears differential is 14 because they have 20 takeaways and only 6 giveaways. So, like I said, the Jaguars and Buccaneers both have 8, plus 8 right now. Though for the Jaguars, if you looked it over in the last few games, they're in the negative, but they still hang on to that point right there. Last category we'll look at, and this is another reason why the Jaguars are failing. They lead the NFL along with the Denver Broncos with 83 penalties. That's the most in the NFL. Third, New York Giants with 79. Maybe another reason their coach was fired, but Broncos and Jaguars, 83 penalties. These are just penalties that were accepted. Jaguars have had so many penalties not even accepted because the play was worse than the penalty that they had. Those are your top 3. Minnesota Vikings, 75. So there's a decent spread between the Broncos and the Jaguars over other teams. And what's funny about that is you would expect, say, the New York Giants to be up there. They're a bad team, and often that's the case. But the Broncos, they're 8-2, and they lead the NFL in penalties. And the Jaguars are, 5-4, winning record as well, and lead the NFL in penalties. It just makes you wonder, both of these teams, if they fix the penalty situation, how much better they might be than where they are right now even. All right, that's a look. We'll take one quick look. I want to look at this because this is another reason probably the Denver Broncos make up for that. This is a quick look at the sacks. Denver Broncos lead the NFL in sacks. 46 times they've sacked the quarterback. 46. The Steelers and Seahawks are second at 32. That's a 14 sack difference. Broncos are on pace maybe to make it into the top 10 all time in sacks. I will look at that next week and see if they are there, but they are on such a good pace compared to everybody else in sacks. And I thought that would be the case when they added more defensive players to their team last year going into this season, free agency and the draft. It was like, wow, this team's going to be unbelievable on defense. And they're starting to show that. All right, that is a wrap for this episode of NFL Top 10s for Friday. Appreciate you listening. Please like and subscribe. You can do that at Just the Stats NFL on YouTube. You can watch the video there where you'll see the charts that I've mentioned, all these top 10s and my top 10 matchups. You'll see all that. Also, you can obviously listen to it on YouTube. You can listen to it on Spotify or Apple or whatever podcast app you find you have. But please subscribe and like the episodes. That. Well, I hope you enjoy your football. Whatever team you have is your favorite team. I hope they win, unless they're playing the Jaguars. So if you're a Chargers fan, I'm sorry. Can't hope for you to win your game. All right, well, enjoy the football weekend, and that is a wrap for this episode of NFL Top 10s for Friday.